Good Thursday afternoon. Brand new update coming in late this morning on Hurricane Irma. Yeah, now a hurricane. This morning it was a tropical storm, so rapid intensification occurred over the last 12 hours. And it didn't just make the jump to Category 1. It went all the way up to Category 2 with winds sustained now of 100 miles per hour, gusts up to 120. The updated Hurricane Center track here does show it becoming a Category 3 major hurricane and then eventually a Category 4 as it approaches the Leeward Islands as we get to early next week. That sustained winds of 130 miles per hour. Now that storm is 2,700 miles away from us. So how in the world can we understand how strong the winds are when nobody's there? There's no ships driving through a hurricane, and buoys are very scarce in that part of the world. Well, the answer to that lies outside of our world. We use satellites and the International Space Station, believe it or not, to get a look down at the storm. And aboard the International Space Station, it's equipped with a very cool sensor. It's actually called the Rapid Scat. And what that does, it looks down at the Earth as it orbits and can actually pick up the speeds of winds on the ocean's surface. Looks right through the clouds and picks that up. Also, we use something called microwave imagery. Works the same way as an X-ray when you go to the doctors. It can give us an inside look at the structure of the storm. We can pick out where the eye wall is, rain bands, and also get a gauge of its intensity. On top of that, hurricane hunters don't travel that far out into the open Atlantic. That's pretty far. 2,700 miles, a long way to travel on a plane. NASA has an answer to that. It's called the Global Hawk. It's actually a drone that can fly 8,300 miles at once on one trip. So that's a really nice asset to have. No scheduled flights for that right now at last check, but certainly a good thing to have just in case we do need to use it in the next few days here to get a little bit of a better feel of how that storm is evolving. Here's how it looks on satellite imagery. Again, a large distance between the storm and us, 2,700 miles. Its movement is about 10 miles per hour. So you break down the math of that, the earliest it would arrive here would be 10 to 11 days from now. So a lot of time for things to change for us. A close-up look, it's really intensifying. You see in the last few frames a defined eye with this at a Category 2 status. Possibly even tonight, it could become a Category 3 storm. It's just intensifying that quickly. We're going to have to gauge now how strong the Bermuda High. Remember we talked about this yesterday, also referred to as the Azores High. And depending on the position of this, the intensity, and how broad it is will determine the eventual track of where Irma goes, and really all Cape Verde storms that develop in that general area. If that area of high pressure is weak, it'll push the storm west like we're seeing now, but it will not keep it on that westerly track. Eventually, it'll correct itself north and then loop out to sea north and east. We call that a fish storm. Doesn't affect any land masses, although Bermuda may still be in the crosshairs there. If that area of high pressure moves a little bit farther to the west, a little bit stronger, it maintains that westerly track for a longer duration of time before taking that loop, but possibly too late that it may put the east coast of the United States in its crosshairs. Now, if that area of high pressure is even stronger, like one of the more reliable European models is indicating, it'll keep that westerly track for a much longer duration of time and possibly even project it all the way out into the Gulf of Mexico, completely missing the United States. But obviously the Gulf of Mexico, that whole area, reeling from Harvey still. They do not need another storm right now. Let's take a look at landfalling September hurricanes. Since 1987, so 30 years of data here, 16 total landfalls, 8 of which originated from the Cape Verde Islands there, particularly where Irma is currently located. Now, the last video we did, some of you commented on the I storms. It's the ones you got to look out for, right? Isabel, you had Irene and Ike. Well, since 1950, I looked into it, there's been 36 storms with the first letter of I. 25 of them became hurricanes, 13 Category 3 or greater, so major hurricanes. And of those 13, 7 made a U.S. landfall. What's drawn here are the 13 major hurricanes. You see them originating either in the Caribbean or down the Cape Verde Island areas. So there's some credence to that fact that you got to look out for those I names, right? Now let's talk about the models here. We're going to look at the GFS and the European. Right now, good consensus, not too far out into the future. Even through the next few days into early next week, not a whole lot of deviation from the two models, keeping that westerly track, even pushing it a little bit farther to the south and southwest. But once we get to the middle of next week, they start to spread a little bit. The GFS says, you know, the high pressure might not be as strong as we think. It's going to start to take that northerly trend, northwest, and then maybe even north from there. The Euro says, I think that area of high pressure is a lot stronger than we all think, and it's going to suppress it to the south, possibly through Puerto Rico and Hispaniola and eventually into Cuba. You see that spread is even more by the end of next week. The GFS is starting to take that turn towards the eastern seaboard, and from there on out, things very, very uncertain. Which track is right? Too far out to tell, but you can see how much not confidence there isn't really in this storm track just yet. So we'll watch it. You got 10 to 11 days. No need to worry about anything right now, but certainly we have a lot of cool assets in place to track this storm and get way, way ahead of it. So that's the latest for now. We'll have a whole new suite of information and data to talk about tomorrow afternoon. Until then, enjoy your Thursday.